Hey everyone, Chris, the thrift shop hustler with another reseller after dark. And it's not quite after dark, it is early in the morning for myself. And it is midday for Don, the auction professor. Don, how you doing?
Dark, it is early.
As you can see, folks, Don is ready to go. Don, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Sorry about
Nah,
that. I had to step away for just a second there.
yeah, don't be sorry, man. It happens to the best of us. Like like I said, this happens all the time. Do you need to put on the headphones?
Yeah, hang on just a second here.
Sure,
Let me
no
pop
problem.
some headphones on here. I'm sorry about that. I had
No,
another computer sitting there and I forgot it was running.
no, don't
I've
be
got
sorry.
a mountain of laptops here, so
No, it's all good. Like people are probably going to be piling in soon anyways. No one's here yet, so it's all good. All right.
okay, sorry about that.
No, no problem, no problem. So first off, I want to say, could you hear me? Everything's good?
Yeah, I'm fine. Let me pop over to the Hangout screen. That'll be a little easier,
All
I
right,
think.
cool. Let me know when you're ready, bud. Borderline Hoarder Ash, Mother's Mustache, Black Crystal Dice, Tara Lee, Disney Family 515. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the live stream. Today we have a very, 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 very special guest with us today. I'm very excited to do this interview in particular for sure. Don, are you with us? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that.
All right, so we're ready to go. Now I'm going to preface this by saying, and this is no knock on any other resellers doing YouTube out there. I love everyone. If YouTube said that I was only able to interview one person on the platform, it would be you, Don, for sure. So welcome to the channel. You want to do a brief introduction?
Sure, that's fine. I appreciate that. For me wise, I've been selling and reselling for, well, since I was 7, I'll say. I'm almost 50 now, so it's quite a long time. I went to my first garage sale with my mom at 7. We've been doing full-time on eBay for, I think this is our 7th year now. We actually have been on eBay since for pretty much the first year. We did Yahoo auctions. Before that, there was actually like a chat board we auctioned off. Before that, even we sold some items, mostly vintage Star Wars cards, trade cards, and things along the line. All non-sports. That's what we really started with. We sold some Pez on eBay back in the first year they were started. It was a huge Pez thing back then.
Yep.
I don't remember the whole story, but and then that's kind of led us to here. Went to college full time, trying to better myself where I was working before, which was in the foods and retail establishment. Graduated with my degree, nothing was available, and we decided, well, we've always made money on eBay. This was almost 7 years ago now, and at that point, there wasn't many jobs in our area, so we started full-time on eBay, and honestly haven't looked back since then.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I stumbled upon your channel maybe like a month and a half ago. And how long have you been on YouTube? And real quick, everyone, Don's link's going to be below. If you have not heard of Don, which I don't know why you wouldn't if you're in the reseller like watching videos, go down there, click the subscribe button on his channel. I also have his Patreon down there, and we're going to talk about that later, Don. I just subscribed to your $9.95 or $9.99 tier, so I'm definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely
I
interested.
see you on there now.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to hang in there, but I will say that I'm in there, and that just shows you the testament that someone like myself who's been in this game for a long time, that I find your stuff valuable. So how long have you been doing YouTube channels for, or YouTube videos for?
I think in May it'll be a year, I think. Yeah, I think it was in May we started, if I'm not mistaken. It's just we started doing it as a lark. I talked about doing it for like a year before I decided to actually do it. I'm not a social person, believe it or not. I get anxiety and things these days. I mean, I used to be in front of people. I used to, be a regional, and we used to have to do speeches and talks, and I used to do the meetings. I was even an altar boy, believe it or not, for a while in front of, a lot of people, but I never liked dealing with big groups of people, I guess. And it was just kind of a push to do it. But I just thought, what the heck, I need to fill in a gap for having somebody to discuss, I guess, my life these days with, because everybody I know, personable wise, doesn't get it at all. They think it's a lark and it's just a waste of my time. That's the gist of it. I've got friends nowadays that, are into what we do and sell as well, but not the same type of items. Mostly clothing and books and RA, but we do RA as well too, though. So
Yeah, I've noticed that it's a very tight community, and I'm the same way too. I'm not really a people person at all. So it's kind of hard when people meet me in person. I'm kind of, in front of the camera, I'm a little different than I am in person. And I get that vibe from you where you're the same way too, where, I'm sure everyone sees the Don behind the camera, and then you're kind of just like myself where, like I'm into doing my own thing and stuff like that. So definitely, I appreciate that, and definitely go and subscribe to Don's channel below. Let's take a step back here. Age 7, you went to your first garage sale with your mom. You said,
yeah, yep,
tell us,
that's
tell us, tell us that story and how that led into your reselling career.
um the first thing I saw was Major Matt Madison, I think's the name of the figure. I was 7, and my parents didn't have a lot of money. It was a tight area. They did with what they could. We got by, so it was always garage sales for my clothing. So I've lived on garage sales. The toys was something I was shocked. I didn't know you could get toys at a garage sale at 7, and it was something I'd never seen before. It's a 1960s Mattel toy. It's something that even then would have been harder to come by, I guess. I don't really remember the whole story on it, and then from there I showed it to a friend, and he had something cool, and it turned into a swap, and then it turned into, hey, I can get some stuff I want from friends. Star Wars had come out. I think the next year after I started going to garage sales. And then I realized I could draw Star Wars characters at school and get a nickel or a quarter or something. So I
Oh
used to do
wow,
that.
cool.
And then I found Wonder Bread, put cards in the bread. And then I got the Star Wars cards, and then it turned into swapping, getting a set. And then I turned out to sell the sets. I mean, we're going back to 77, 78 is when I was doing all this and stuff. And it just got into one thing. I did the non-sports cards for a long time. I was in Boy Scouts. I did like the postage stamp merit badge because one of the Scout Masters was into that. And then I liked the stamps. My father gave me his collection. And then I started to go to shows and swapping. And then we still were doing Star Wars, and that led us to go to a magazine and a website back then. It was called Big Reel. I don't know if you know what that is, but
It
it,
sounds familiar.
it was an industrial magazine, kind of like the Big Red Toy Box was back then in the day. Now I think Big Red Toy Box has their own eBay site or store, Huge Monster store, if I'm not mistaken. But we started getting into those, and 10 years later, I was, already selling and swapping, and I used to set up at some of the mall shows for like arts collectibles and like movie. There used to be big mall shows back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, where there'd be like entertainment collectibles. And then I met my future boss. He was an exhibitioner for our city, and he started buying artwork for me, and then I started flipping stuff with him, and he actually hired me, and I actually worked at his movie theater for like 3 years. And I've sold throughout the day, and when I worked at the theater, then we went and nabbed movie posters, press book stills, um, even film cells. I'd pick up all the clippings off the floor. He'd put them together. Usually he'd put them in a little popcorn container for me at the end of the shift, and then I'd take those. So I got bags of that stuff. I got movie trailers still, and you name it. Anything I could swap back then was fair game. The Star Wars vintage original figures, we had them everywhere. I had every line that came out back then, I was able to swap or save and get it through purchases like that. I had Eagle One with all the figures from Space 1999. I had the whole Mego set for Star Trek. I had, all that stuff. I mean, any of that era I liked, even if it was before my time. I grew up, my parents, like the first toy that I think I actually remember them buying for me, I was like 8 or 9, and it was a vintage original G.I. Joe with the Jeep, which was just awesome back in the day.
Like it's kind of funny, like the parallels between your life and my life are actually really uncanny, because I live in Burbank, California, which is like the media center of the United States. All Disney Studios is here, Warner Brothers Studios here. So I kind of grew up around that whole industry, and I used to actually dumpster dive when I was like 9,
Oh,
because
jeez.
there's like post production places all around here, and we used to get film, like you were saying, like they had like literally whole rolls of film that they would throw out. I don't know why they would throw them out, but this is like the early 90s. And I remember my best find was I did find some Star Wars stuff. I think the best thing I ever found was like a 2001 Space Odyssey. Not the whole reel, but it's like clippings of it. And I wish I saved those to this day, but I don't even know where all that stuff went to. But like, it's just funny how like what you're saying is like triggering back all the memories for me also. Let's talk about let's take a step back and talk about movie posters. Like I see some of them every once in a while. Now I usually how I usually go by it is movie posters are usually the old ones are usually folded. Am I correct? Like they have folds in them. And
It depends. I mean, hang on one second. I got a stack right
sure,
here.
yeah. Because what it is there's so many reprints nowadays, and I'm
You
trying
can
to.
tell you can tell the reprints in like 2 seconds, and I'll show you how. This is a vintage one here. I don't know what it's for, but these are the National Screen Service numbers. That first number is the year it came out, 1969, and this is film number 344. Every one that's say vintage pre 1905 or 2005 or earlier is going to have that number. If it doesn't say that number, it's not a real one. That's the gist on it. Let me. I buy posters constantly. I mean, it's literally the same number, and some will say NSS for National Screen Service on them. I mean, I worked in the theaters. We used to get these. I used to order them from the National Screen Service, and I actually was the one who cut out and mailed in the halftone ads for the newspaper, even. So let's see if there's I got a newer one here. This might give you a better idea. I don't know. It looks like maybe the Pope of Greenwich Village, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, this is great information because like I said, there's so many reprints now. It's hard to tell. Usually, like you said, those little numbers, I didn't really know about the numbers, but I usually look at the fine print.
A separate piece, same thing, 72. That is what you want. If it doesn't have a NSS number on it, it's not legit. At least the vintage ones. I don't pay any attention to anything newer these days. I only do vintage stuff pretty much. Not that there's anything wrong with those. I know the Terminator one that I have, and all the Terminators, the Alien posters, all have NSS numbers on them. That's literally what I look for everything movie poster wise. I still have connections in that industry, believe it or not. I worked for Disney for 10 years, and they got a bargain basement. I just got a box of Disney posters, and just the other day from somebody who works there, they went to bargain basement and bought every single 8x10. I give them a premium. Obviously, they make money off of me by doing this, and they don't have to sit there and sell them. So that's how it works for me anyway. I still talk to people at Disney, and that's where I get some of this stuff Disney-wise. Other ones, I still have a friend who works at the theater here in town, and then we do the auctions when if a movie theater is closing down in our area for a 3-state area, I'm going to hit it, or somebody that I know is going to get it for me. We got like pickers, and they can hit these stuff, but I love movie stuff. I mean, I love it. I mean, personally, it's one of my favorite. I worked at Disney, and we got to meet Tim Burton, and me and the wife did the opening Nightmare Before Christmas. They set up a huge building just for it when they released it at Disney, the MGM Studios, and we could go in there and play with the sets, and we got to meet him. And they did it for a month, and then they tore it down. We did every one of those events we could do. We did the opening of Dick Tracy. I was at the premiere. I mean, it was really cool. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. I am so into that kind of stuff that, it was a dream come true at, some point, at least meeting Tim Burton and all. I mean, stuff like that. Cause he has been, I do bizarre art. I do out there stuff. And for me, he's like the king of bizarre for me. I know there's other ones, but he's in my age group, in my following era, I guess you could say. I don't know your opinion on him, but he's.
Oh no, well, I've never met him, but he actually grew up in my town. He went to the rivals high school, and I don't know if I mentioned this on your other show that Edward Scissorhands is actually based off of Burbank, California, like the whole urban kind of look and everything. So like Tim Burton, and I went to I would say like maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, he had an exhibit at the LACMA or the museum, the Los Angeles Museum of Art or somewhere like that. And so they had a lot of that original work. They had the maquettes for Nightmare Before Christmas. And for those that don't know, maquettes are pretty much like larger statues. Sometimes they're made out of clay. Sometimes they're made out of other materials. Do you want to explain what a maquette is? You'd probably have more know than I do.
A maquette, and we've had a few luckily in the past here and there, but a maquette's like a 3-dimensional figure. They're usually mounted on a base. They're not movable. It's like, for an example, the artist will take it and they can turn it around and look at it. I've seen them in I don't know how many different sizes. Maquettes are awesome. There's very few of those made. The maquettes are rarer than the actual animation figures, you know, the fully jointed ones, at least from
Mhm.
what I've personally seen, because they only made a few of them. And if they like the director didn't like the movie or something, they'd have to shoot another maquette, make a new maquette over, and that's about the only time that they did another one, from what I've seen. I mean, we have all the books. I've got the ILM Industrial Light and Magic book, and I've got Sam Winston Studios book and all that. And I've read them from cover to cover, and I wanted to know what everything was. I've had them since the day they came out. Believe it or not, I don't.
You mentioning ILM actually reminded me of a funny story I heard from, I don't remember where I heard this from, but and that was actually local too. So I guess like when the shooting of Star Wars was done, they had that huge thing of or the Death Star, and they ended up like smashing it up and throwing it in the trash.
I've heard that too.
Could
I've
you
heard that
imagine
too.
how much like even a little square of that would be worth nowadays?
I think I saw something that they were, maybe it was the Star Destroyer they were redoing. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'll take that back. I think Sam Winston Studios found in the trash sitting outside of some building the actual, alien main ship that they're rebuilding. I'm almost sure that's
Oh,
what it
no
was.
kidding.
Yeah, and it was in little pieces, and they actually took a dustpan and broom and swept up all the junk underneath this thing. It's been sitting outside. It was all warped and stuff. I'm sure that's what it was I saw. I'd love to find something like that. I mean, it would just be an awesome thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a little step back also. Did your parents play a role at all in your reselling career? Like did some of their hobbies kind of transcend into you and then you've kind of picked up and shown to your kids? Like, is there like a generational thing there with your parents that could tie into reselling?
My mom was frugal, so she even made her own clothes. Sometimes she sewed and stitched, and that's about the only take I can take from that. My father died when I was younger, and he worked himself to death pretty much. He had a
Mm.
heart attack. I was 17, so I don't have a huge, you know, relationship to discuss with my kids, unfortunately. I've lived away from my house, you know, from my where my mom was for years of my life, like 15 years. So, unfortunately, we've had, you know, haven't had a big, huge rapport. Not like I'm outs with my mom or anything. We just never lived close enough to always interact and do stuff. When I was a kid, as I said, though, it was just the garage sale aspect of it. She didn't resell. It was just to make ends meet, to, you know, supply us with clothing and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't in back then either. I was trying to tell and explain how things have changed from then till now. Back then, if you wore the kind of clothing that I did, you got made fun of at school religiously. Nowadays, you know, I mean, there's a song which, you know, thrift shop,
Yeah.
obviously. So
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't matter anymore, which I'm so glad, in my case anyway. So
Yeah, that's too funny because I know exactly what you're talking about. It was a different time back then. And then speaking of first or speaking about the past, you said you started eBay right in the beginning. That's when I started eBay. I think it was like 96, early 96 is when I started.
somewhere in
And
there, yeah.
yeah, and you remember how crazy and like it was like a weird blog page and you might know there was two other auction sites. Now I know Yahoo Auctions, I want to say came around in 98 or somewhere in there, but there was you bid or I bid or something that was before eBay. Do you remember that at all?
iBid and Ubid sounds really familiar. We found eBay by lark, and I put an item up there just randomly one day. Hadn't a clue what it even would happen, and it sold like for some. It was a Star Wars 8 millimeter sound, like a 15-minute film, and we got some crazy price, and it was something I bought just because I love Star Wars, and it was sitting on my wall, and I didn't know what to do with it. That's the only reason we even found it. We were looking, what I wonder what this is, what's it's worth, and we found eBay. Yahoo and eBay were the only ones I ever messed with. As I said, I've heard of the other ones. They sound really familiar, but I can't. Geez, I can't even think about any other ones we ever touched back then. I mean, nowadays I'm on 9 sites, so I don't, you know, it's
Yeah,
kind of hard to think that far back to how they used to do it. I mean,
yeah, that's crazy that you're on so many platforms. Like I've tried to do that. Like I'm on Amazon, I'm on Etsy, I'm on eBay. I've tried Poshmark and all this other stuff. And I mean, I'm on those sites, but I find eBay for me and Amazon's actually pretty good too. Man, that must be crazy trying to deal with 9 things without like central software to like manage it all.
well, some of the sites, like there's a postcard site. I don't have it on the screen here, but there's
I
a
think I
post.
know. Yep, I know the one you're talking about.
All they sell is postcards, and then we do, shoot, what's the other site? There's a stamp site we do too, but I don't. The stuff we do on those sites, I don't list on another site. They're usually lower end stuff for the most part. Anything I expect to go over a decent amount is going to go up on eBay. I have better luck selling the cheaper stuff on other sites because there's not as many sellers. So the cheaper stuff is more sought after, I guess you could say, on those other sites. Um, I have to split it up. I don't know any other way to do it, but we do cross list like records on all three, on Discogs, eBay, and Amazon. We list some Victorian items the same way, and there's other sites too that we do that same thing. You got to be choosy. We did Poshmark. I gave it up. It just wasn't worth all the
No.
sharing and the time. For the time I was investing into that, I could have just listed or hired somebody else to do something else for us, and then I would have been even farther ahead than if I did Poshmark. Nothing against Poshmark. I know personally people who make a living at it now, but it's just not for me. No dog or anything like that. It's just not my thing. Instagram's really kind of takes a little bit of getting used to because I'm not a phone person. So for me, I didn't realize when I signed up that it's only from the phone. So that was a nuisance to me. I have laptops everywhere. I don't think there's a room in this house that doesn't have at least 1 or 2 laptops. I can see probably 4 or 5 in this room right now, that we use constantly. So I'm not a big phone person, I guess.
No, like I'm laughing because it's just like me, man. Like I don't know how the hell people could list on their phones because there's people that 100% list on their phones, and I could not for the life of me. And I think that's the old school kind of thing in us that we've been around for so long that to me having a big screen and a keyboard and like a mouse and like a printer and like all that stuff in front of you is how it should be. I can't do everything on this little tiny
Same
phone.
here. Even with our laptops, I don't think any screen in here is smaller than a 17.9. We've got, the full size. I guess maybe it's a 19-inch. They're large size laptops. I don't even like the small ones. I got a stack of like Office Minis up there, HP Minis that we used to use, and I hated the small screen because it's so hard to see the quality on your images. I know you can blow them up and all that, but it's just a nuisance. I can just instantly tell on a laptop or PC with a decent sized screen. I have a phone. I've got all the scanning apps. That's pretty much what I use it for. I don't talk on the phone in the car. Or I don't text people while I'm driving or anything like that. So
Yeah, I love the scanning apps. I think, of course, Amazon's free. I have the Seller tool, which is I think 9.99 a month or something like that. And for me, it's worth it. I mean, some people would say like, why are you spending $10 on that a month? But to me, I like it. I mean, eBay has the scanning tool. So are those kind of the ones that you use to check things out?
yeah, I mean, I've got some of the other ones. I use Camel, Camel, Camel.
Oh yeah.
Shoes, I can't even remember now.
What's nice about the Seller tool is it actually is linked to Camel, Camel, and Keepa. So you can just
Keep I have Keep
yeah.
on there
So you
too.
just scan one thing and then it pops up and it gives you like all the data, and then you can actually click the camel button or the keep a button. It'll take you directly to that link too, which is nice. So
I
um
found I would if I have it, this one will be worth calling out. Give me just 1 second to
sure, yeah.
see if I have this other link. It's probably on my other laptop.
No, it's all
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
I found another site. Hang on just a second.
Now we
Yeah,
want to
it's
give a
on my
huge
other.
shout out to Landshark Picker, who's in the thing. He just actually developed a Chrome extension for Walmart where you can for RA. And I'm not a big RA person, but for those that want to check that out, definitely go and check out Landshark Picker's channel. He's in the chat.
Yeah, I watch him as well too. There's a program though that I found. Um, Shoot, I can't think what it's called, but it's an app or a site, and it'll group gang all of your when you do comp searches. You got to scroll through eBay and all that. This
Mhm.
site puts like every single comp you can imagine, like 10 across, as many down as you can scroll, and it cuts down your comp search time down in like a quarter of the time. I wish
Yeah.
I had it on on here. I'm going to do a video about it actually, but it's tools like that I use the most. And as soon as I found this one, man, I haven't used anything on eBay. They're actually linked and they have an agreement with eBay. And I wished I could remember. I don't want to walk back off camera and go to a different one, but I'll post something to it. But there's tools like that I use the most. I'm not one to pay. I don't pay for worth points or any of that. My stuff, I know people find it hard to believe. I only talk about stuff that I know. I don't talk about shoes. I don't talk about clothing. I know the prices for my stuff, or I know how to find them without paying, I guess you could say.
So let's step back a little bit. Yeah, so yeah, that's one of the things that I really love about your channel is your kind of informational things about different products. Like I think the one that and like okay, here's the thing. Like I'm a little stubborn. Like I think like sometimes like God, I know a lot of stuff, and then you come along and just blow my mind about stuff that I've never even thought of. And so that's what I really want to say for everyone to go and subscribe to your channel ASAP. But when you started talking about plants and like some of the ones that were worth like thousands of dollars, I was like shaking my head going, I know nothing in this business.
That was by accident. My wife found some horned melons, and we couldn't find them. We started searching online to figure out where we could buy them at. We found them at a local market. They're expensive. They're some kind of odd fruit from, I couldn't even tell you where it's from. Some African country or something like that. Real good food. Tastes awesome. And we found out that just the seeds were selling for like good money on eBay. And so we're like, no way. So we ended up selling the seeds. We planted some plants and we grew some, and we sold seedlings. And then we figured out we could make a deal with the people who actually supplied. So we went over above the people who we first got the fruit from and found their supplier. And then pretty soon we were ordering them, eating in them, drying out the seeds in mass quantity, and then making a lot of money, thousands of dollars off of seeds until they hit the market broadly. Then once the market was flooded with them, everybody was doing it. But when we first got in, man, we were making thousands on tiny, 10 seed lots and little tiny plants about this big. And I don't know how long it took to even have these to fruit. So if they bought them, it could have been 10 years before they had a fruit. I have no clue. I don't have a clue, but every one we had and grew sold. Every seed we had sold, every single one. And then we started looking at like the bonsai. Excuse me. And bonsai are awesome. I love the miniature stuff. So for me, that was awesome. And, there's a market for all of that stuff out there. Anything you can find, like plant wise, that's rare, and like the living rocks. And I remember them as a kid, and I was just dumbfounded. We've got like jades and succulents in the house here that we grow on our own. So I've always had, some form of greenery in the house, and all that stuff sells. How do you think the nurseries and the markets make this money? I mean, they ship most of the markets and nurseries, or go to, ship those same items, whether they be, flats of tomatoes that are 12 inches tall or what. They'll ship a flat. You can ship those to the post office, believe it or not.
Yeah, there's a guy that's on YouTube here that is part of our merch group, and his name's Jeff Davison. So shout out to Jeff. Is he started a not hydro, I think it's hydroponics or hydroponics garden in his backyard, and people are making like literally thousands of dollars by selling like baby greens and little tomatoes and things like that. So I mean, if you're a reseller, there's like you mentioned living rock, and when I was watching your video, I literally paused the video, went to YouTube to go search for that, because I was like, what the hell is this? And I was amazed where it was just like this thing that was all shriveled up. Someone poured water on it and did a time lapse, and it literally just opened up like a blossom.
They can sit there like dormant for, I don't know, maybe a year, even for all I know. The first ones I saw literally were at a place in Michigan called Hidden Lake Gardens, and they've got these arborary buildings. It's you can walk into like these different zones. And this was when I was like 10, I saw these things for the first time. And I've always been fascinated by them because it literally is like gray like a rock in some parts of the area, some of these, and they literally look like a rock. But when it's the right time of the year, the humidity they would raise in the building at some times of the year, and they would all just bloom. It would just be amazing. Just in a matter of a day or so, there'd be a field of flowery rocks sitting there. It was really kind of neat, I thought.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So let's actually kind of veer to the left here a little bit. You talked about Discogs. Now, I've got in my lifetime, I've maybe picked up maybe a couple of really large vinyl collections, and I stumbled upon Discogs maybe like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago. And you said that you sell on that. I've never sold on that, but I find, and for those that don't know, Discogs pretty much like a vinyl. Actually, they do CDs and stuff too. I use it for, like, if I have records, I'll look up the little numbers that are on the sides, and then it'll tell me whether or not, if it's a rare one or not. I use it as kind of like a reference. How do you go about using Discogs, or if you want to tell the audience what that's all about?
Discogs, I mean, I sell cheaper records on Discogs. Discogs is better for me for the cheapo ones. Anything, say, under $40 is going to go on Discogs for the most part. I don't usually cross-list the cheaper ones. For Discogs, though, what I use it for pricing is just those cheaper ones to see what they go for on there. For the most part, I use a site called PopPsych, which is one that I personally pay for. I pay for PopPsych. I have used PopPsych for 6 years. It's like a Swedish company, if I'm not mistaken. They translate and transfer your money from US to currency. It's the only reason I can say. I think it's from Sweden, but it's POPSIKE. I've used that site literally for probably a decade or more. We started paying when we went full time, but that is the site I use for everything for pricing. Discogs is still fine for the cheaper ones, but if you want to know anything on the rare records, it's got to be PopPsych. Craig Moyers is another one that I use, and then if you type in rare Northern Soul 45s, there's one more site I use too. Shoot, I've got favorites saved in, you know, a little tab. I can't remember the other name of it, but if you literally type it in, it's Craig Moyer's site, and then the other one, it's just a rare Northern Soul site, and they actually have the price guides for Northern Soul, which are a 5-volume set that costs like I want to say $600 or $700, but you can cut out the middleman and just use PopPsych. For all those who don't know what to look up and you can't find a specific record on eBay, 9 out of 10 times, or probably 95 or 98 to 98% of the time, PopPsych's going to have that record, even when eBay doesn't have one for the past 90 days, 100 days, whatever it is. PopPsych is the bomb for record pricing.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, and this is I had to find this out, is sometimes you get a record and you can't look it up, you can't find it, but there's that. I don't know if it's a registration number, or do you know what the proper term of the number is? That's around the you know what I'm talking about, the
You're
inside.
talking about the Matrix?
Yes, so it's scratched in from the original.
Some of them are scratched in and some are stamped or, you know, hot and pressed into the vinyl itself. The matrix number is what you use to be able to tell if it's a first edition, first pressing. Like some of the matrix numbers, like on let's say a Living Stereo Classical, it's going to be S1 or 1S. Those are like a first press stampings. They don't correspond with what you would think would be like a first pressing. Sometimes it's like P1, Z1. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. You really have to dig into files and know people to find out some of that information. PopPsych, you can find it sometimes in the actual listing information, but I'm on Reddit and we do some other things. I've got a bunch of people that we talk to on that know far more on the Matrix than I would ever care to know. It gets confusing after a while because they can tell which pressing it is by whether it says 2S, 5S, 10S. Some of the records even will say like 19S, and that's the first one they ever pressed of that disc. So those numbers, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, maybe there is, but I've never looked into it enough. I know at least the ones that you need to know the stampers on it. Matrix, they call them stampers. That's another term they call them. Usually if it's a really high dollar, like a Beatles one's the only ones you need to know for the most part, or some of the scarce 45s, and you'll see those on PopPsych. You won't see them most of the time on eBay, and I hardly ever see anybody posting a matrix on stamper on Discogs. That's why I say PopPsych's the bomb. It's the only site that I pay for like that, and I've ever paid for. I've never paid for anything else but PopPsych. But again, we sell, you know, thousands of records. I mean, thousands of them. I mean, in an average week, I might get 5,000 45s. No exaggeration. Wow. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing. That's where you're going to make the money at. You know, when I can't sell them individually, then we'll gang them up into 125 disc lots, and then those will go out for, say, 50 or 60 bucks. It'll pay for my guy, and then I'll make my money back off the listing that way. So
now you can ship that large lot with media mail, correct? Like,
of course, yes. You can ship 70 pounds is the max, if I'm not mistaken, on that for media. I've shipped at least 70 pounds in records before. I limit it to 125 45s or 25 LPs if I'm going to do it. It's safer for the discs. That's what I can say.
Yeah, because I've dealt with large collections of LPs before, not to the level that you did. I watched your video where you had like 3 or 4 trips.
That was monstrous. That was monstrous. I've never bought so many nice records in my life. That's a once in a lifetime. I have never seen so many LPs that I had to look up in my life, I could say. And I don't mess with LPs hardly anymore at all, just because of the space they take up. I love the 45s and I love 78s because I can flip 78s quicker than I can 45s and LPs nowadays on Amazon, believe it or not. So, I mean, yeah. If something walks into your lap like that, you know some ins on something and you know that it's going to be in a specific auction, I'm going to show up for that or have somebody there. This one was one that I had to see. I was ready to sink some big cash into it if I had to. So
do you know what the total number of records were, or LPs were, for that particular lot?
Almost 8,000 or something like that.
Wow.
I mean, we didn't even count down to the very last record. I mean, most records, when I judge how many's there, I go with a ruler. You can tell how many are in so many inches, and it's just like postcards. There's so many postcards fit in so many inches. So that's what I judge when I buy bulk. You got to know your quantity on bulk. So have a dimensions on, you know, how many 45s, how many 78s, LPs, whatever you're buying, just like non-sports cards or something. If somebody has 5,000 box of cards, obviously you can tell, but other than that, you got to know how many inches, and that's literally how I can tell if, I'm getting what I'm supposed to get. So
That's so great that you said that. Like, I think that's, to me, like, that is like, oh, that makes total sense because you said
it
baseball cards.
does.
There's an 800 count box. You know what that looks like. When I shipped off, or I didn't ship it, but when I had my collection, and by the way, the largest collection of LPs I ever dealt with was like 1,200, and that was like a
That's
huge,
a lot still.
yeah, and that's a huge, was a whole portion of my kitchen. It was sitting in all those boxes. So 8,000 is like a a warehouse full
Uh,
almost, man.
we've got like 240,000 records right now in inventory.
Oh,
And most of those are not listed right now. I haven't bought. I still buy them. How it works with us for records? If I buy that many, I'm going to sell some good records right off the bat, and my money's back in right away. So if I don't sell it right away, I don't care. My father had a big workshop that's been empty since, geez, I don't even remember what the year was, 86 or 87. And it's just full of records. I bought or acquired old restaurant shelving from some friends, and we used to buy out businesses. Me and a couple other guys. I'd save this part of it, and another guy would do like the kitchen equipment and the machinery. Some would do lighting and the chairs, and I'd do some of the PC equipment. And I got shelving a couple times, and it's all lined on shelves. They're Metro Max shelves, if you know what those are. If
no,
you've
but
done
I'm gonna write
foods,
that down. Metro.
they're Metro Max has, and this is what most industrial kitchens use. They're lined shelves with like a vinyl, so they don't want rust. And then I ordered the extra. I paid for the shelf covers. It's like a cover that fits on them, and you can stack the records, and it won't slide through the slots. So it's a safer environment for. But Metro Max is what I've used for my shelving. On here is a different story with what I have in this building here, just because it's heavier stuff for the most part, or I need more space for it. So I've got the I think these are off Walmart, the shelves I standardly use for other stuff, but the record ones are very specific. Those shelves can hold, geez, a lot. I mean, they're some of the shelves are 8-footers too, so which is a
Wow.
big plus. The shelves around here in my area now are like 4-footers, so
Yeah, those records get heavy. And you mentioned storage. I highly suggest everyone to store their records vertically. Don't stack them on top of
definitely.
each other because they can warp and do all that kind of stuff. Am I right?
Yeah, the worst ones are when I first started into records, and I never messed with the 78. I didn't realize how fragile they were. The first record I ever sent was broken instantly. It arrived in shattered pieces. So 78s are the worst. Don't ever stack them. And even when you're standing a 78 on the end, I still even line the area that it's on with at least some newspaper, at least to add a little bit of a cushion. Because if you come down hard on a 78, you could even chip. They're called rim chips. You could chip the edge of the rim on it and do some damage. So 78s are the worst to store, but I make more money on 78s overall than I do on some other records. Now I sell 45s, and I've sold some single 45s for like $4,000+ a piece. So there's
Wow.
some good money in there, but overall I get more flips and high dollar flips on 78s these days. I
Now,
might
go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say those 4,000 ones that you sold, were those jazz, or was it
No,
what
no,
was
no. Northern Soul. The highest record that I've ever sold was Tommy and the Derbies. And if you go to Pop Psych, I think you can still maybe see one of the copies that I sold. But we got 4,700 for one and 42 for another. Northern Soul is what you're going to get that kind of money out of. Like a $4,000 jazz record is going to be an LP by Blue Note for the most part. Those are probably what you're looking at if you're talking in the thousands for a jazz. Northern Soul, though, are let me just tell you what a Northern Soul is, because I'm sure people are wondering.
I don't
It's
know.
not.
Yeah.
Northern Soul is a term used by the British. Northern Soul classics for England are classics that wouldn't have been popular over here. They'd be the B side of a record, or some rare, like Tommy and the Derbies was released on a shoot. I've got it right on the tip of my head. I'll think of it in a minute. But it's an oddball label. They only made like 2 songs. This label that they're on. It's Derby, I think, is what the label is. But they're collected highly over there, and they've termed them Northern Soul just because at the time Detroit was the powerhouse of soul music. Even though most of the high dollar ones don't come from the north, they can come from anywhere. Tommy and the Derbies came from Jackson, Mississippi, We lived in the area. I was lucky enough to find a stack of these records, not knowing they were worth anything. It was the first ones, and I've been selling them for years. I've been lucky enough to find one maybe every couple years out of these, and it's a good $4,000 when you find one. And there's other ones like that too. We're luckily in the town that I'm in, there is a one singer that was from this town that has a record that's like $3,000, and I found 3 or 4 of those luckily too. You got to kind of center in on what's in your area to know what to look for. It'll give you an in on what neighborhoods and what kind of music to look for, I guess I could say.
Yeah, man. Like I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, but I think like there's things that have gone down tremendously in value over the last 20 years, and there's things that have been really popular. And vinyl over the last 20 years, I would say, has just taken off from what it was in the 80s and the early 90s.
From then, yeah, I would definitely agree. Vinyl has never stopped being pressed. There's no lull in vinyl pressing. Obviously now there's so many more people pressing vinyls. Jack White's a perfect example. I mean, he does a lot of interesting stuff with them. I don't know if you've seen the vinyl with the liquid inside of them and some of the things that he's done. He's put some on balloons and just let 100 go off in the air. And some of those discs are hundreds of dollars. He's built a vibe on records. And I kind of think that Jack White is part of the reason that a lot of the record people are, clamoring for these new performers to, press records again. He, in my book, if you follow records or not, he has been one influential on the record industry for that kind of reason. He's created a draw, somebody wanting a record. I know record days and all that they do, but for me, record days aren't a big, huge event at all. It's getting some new people that may not buy it, of course, otherwise, but it's people like Jack White that keep it
Right.
going there. I mean, he literally revolutionized some of the advent of some of this kind of promotional items and stuff in my book.
Geez, man, I think we can go forever with this conversation. Like literally, I have a notepad that's
Yeah, I
filled
always have a notepad.
with notes already, dude. Like just from this 40 minutes that we've been here. If you're enjoying this video, for everyone in the chat room, we got Borderline, Adams Exploits, Murray C, Amazon Seller 99. Definitely click that like button for sure. We're gonna get into some more stuff. Yeah, we just got in some 45s like a couple weeks ago, and I used Discogs to look up their little I think you called them matrix numbers to see if they were.
There's a item or a disc number for the record, which is
That's what I
on the
meant.
actual. Yeah, the matrix is the number that's in the wax. Those numbers, you don't really need to look up those numbers for the most part. Just go literally use PopPsych for everything. Just type in the artist and a couple words of the title, and that's all you need on PopPsych. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry about any of that, because you're going to find out that a lot of people don't list those in some of the sites, and Discogs is not the best site to look up some of the scarce records. People do not put the 1,000. I mean, you'll see some on there, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, I far do better doing it on eBay, some of those high dollar ones. And like the soul records, you're going to sell them far quicker on there than you would anywhere else. Like I brought up Craig Moyer. He's like a huge Northern Soul guy. That's where the money's at in 45s. Northern Soul is the money makers there for any of those soul records, and PopPsych is the place to look them up.
Oh, that's good. Like, I'm glad we did the show because I've never heard of that before. And like I said, in my business, we get in LPs. I don't want to say every week, but every couple of weeks, someone will donate a huge thing of records. And so when we got those 45s, they're in this crazy like 70s like metal thing. And I got excited for a second when I opened it up and I saw that they were the smaller ones. And then I started to pull out like they were local garage bands, like West Coast garage bands. Like I saw a hole and I got excited because like, oh my God, is there Nirvana in here? But there wasn't
No
Nirvana.
Sub Pop or anything.
Yeah, no, exactly. None of that. No Sonic Youth, none of that kind of stuff. But it was local stuff like Southern California. So I got excited, but we didn't make a ton of money on those, but it was a good learning experience. And PopPsych, I'm definitely gonna go and check that out to do
I
more.
use it daily.
Yeah. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit, man. We can talk about records forever because that's one of the things that I'm not really like that too tuned on. So you're going. Let's talk about kits, man. Let's talk about model kits. For me, I first got into that stuff in the early '80s. My dad, who worked for Northrop Grumman, he just what do you call it? Retired last year, so he's worked on the B2. He's worked on
Oh.
all kinds of stuff and stuff that he can't even talk about. That's the funny part about working in that industry too.
That you interrupt you for just a
Yeah,
second. My father worked for the M1 tank project. He actually, when he was out of the military, he was in charge for the plant security and other things he did there. And he literally did tank construction parts or and security for the plant. And I couldn't know what he did. I mean, that was the same thing. There,
that's the
people,
same thing here. Like we'd be like, "Hey, what are you working on?" I can't talk about it. So, but you know, he'd talk about it like 20 years later after the
yeah,
fact.
I heard
But
about it from my mom.
yeah, exactly. So I think my dad actually built an M1 model before. But anyways, he I would consider my dad like a model, a master model maker. And I wish that now that he was retired, he'd get more into that because he makes his own bullets. Like he was making t-shirts with airbrushes
Yeah,
when I
I
was
did
young.
that.
So that's where I got into all this stuff was from him. It's not like he was like, "Hey, do this." I just watched him growing up over the years, and then I took an interest in what he was doing. It wasn't like forced upon me. So he would build models all the time, and that's how I got into making models and into that kind of stuff because he would buy, like in the late '80s and the early '90s, he'd buy those Horizon vinyl kits.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. I vaguely remember those. Yeah.
yeah, and so he'd put those together and then sell them for like hundreds of dollars at consignment model shops and things like that. And he was making pretty good money. So that's how I got introduced to garage kits. And you talked about I call them garage kits here in Southern California. I want to say I don't know. I don't want to be like this is where garage kits were born, but I want to say like that's in the '60s and the '70s. There was people making all kinds of like car stuff and things like that out of the garage, and that's how I in my area we call them garage kits. What did you call them before?
The garage or resin kits, same
Resin
basic thing.
kits,
Yeah.
right? Because they're made out of resin. So
Yeah.
I was introduced to that stuff at an early age too. And as a matter of fact, a couple of days ago, my dad pulled out some stuff and was like, "Hey, is this worth anything?" And I've never seen the stuff that he was pulling out. I was like, "Oh man, that could be worth some money." But anyways, do you want to tell our viewers about those kind of kits?
Um, I'll just give you my history on him. My youngest son goes with me. We do some father son things. In fact, we're doing one tomorrow, but we were at a place. My son's a huge Alien and Predator fan. We waited in line. We got the tickets and drove an hour to go to Prometheus and all that when it first came out to see it before everybody else could. So I mean, we're gung ho. We were at a antique mall in Meridian, Mississippi, 10, 15 years ago, and he noticed a Alien model up there, and sure enough, he was right. He was small back then still. And at that booth, the guy had dozens of resin models. I mean, just dozens. And I had no clue what they were back then. I didn't even know you could make these things at your house and all this 15 years ago, or whatever the case may be. I used to put together the '70s MPC Star Wars, sets and stuff like that. So I bought some of these. We were already doing eBay. The first one I listed was I think it was a 3 foot tall Robbie the robot from Forbidden Planet, the most broadcast robot up until I think C3PO and R2D2. He
Yep.
when Star Wars came out, Robbie was the king of robots still because he had been in everything, including even Twilight Zone episodes. He was even, if I'm not mistaken, in a Lost in Space episode. They even made fun of it and kind of carried back to it in like Futurama. Even still to this day, they still talk about Robbie. But we sold that thing for like $600. I paid like 40, and then I ended up buying this guy's entire collection. We had, I mean, a ton of resins, and ever since then, I really got into resins. One of the kits was from a guy, I think his name was Cardboard something. You may know him, but he was from California, if I'm not mistaken. But he was the king of studio scale resin kits. And it was back to Eagle One again. It was an Eagle One. I wanted to keep it, but we sold it for, geez, like almost $1,000, this thing. And it
Oh
had
wow.
hand tooled brass parts in it. And it was just this phenomenal thing. In fact, there's a video of the guy I sold it to opening it up on YouTube from like years ago. I ran across it by accident one day, but that's where I started into it. And then, I used to do, scratch building. I'd, kit bash stuff and make my own things all the time or add little details on a pre-existing stuff. So from then we realized we could make our own, and that's where we went with it. We literally started to figure out what we could do and market where we wouldn't get sued. My first resin kit was and I still sell this exact same one. It's the main clown from Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh, the guys, the Kyoto brothers. They're actually down the street from here.
Yeah.
I visited them in their studio one time. They still have the puppets there in a case. They're all falling apart because of the
The
foam.
Latex,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I loved the movie when it first came out, and I loved the character idea, and that was the first one I did, and I thought, you know, who's gonna wanna buy it? But I've sold every single one of those, and then I've been hooked on them ever since. The, that's what I think about in my free time. I try to make up an idea for a kit or figures or whatever the case may be. We just bought some special wax, and I've got the monster clay, but the wax stuff is the bomb. It's like a blue, some kind of blue wax they use for jewelers that I'm now creating the stuff in now, because you can make, like, you've got the Gary V figure, which I was really
Oh
impressed
yeah.
with here.
Could I show you that right now? I still
Go
have.
ahead.
Well, hold on.
That's part of the reason I found you. I saw that figure sitting there.
It's funny because I have to ship off a couple of them, and my printer ran out of ink for the back one. Could you see that for the back? And so I decided that I was actually going to put this in the thrift shop today for $5 and see if anyone buys it.
So
So,
you print those, you reprint a sheet and then it's glued down, or how do you print that then, I guess is my.
okay, so basically I use sticker paper and yeah, so I use a high-end sticker paper. You know what's funny is we'll talk about this at through DMs for sure, because it's a lengthy process and I don't want to like bore
No,
anyone with
no,
that
I
whole
got you.
thing. So let's step back actually to kit bashing. For those that don't know, kit bashing is basically when you take like a different kits and you literally pull pieces out of each one to build a unique item. Some people watching this program might not know a lot of the Star Wars ships that were made in the movies were actually World War II, World War One tanks, pieces of those model kits put together to actually make those ships.
There's a universal greebly is what they call it, which is, I wish I could remember the name of the kit. There's one kit that is like every space model ever made has the part from this one kit. Universal greebly is what they call it though, but it's like one model that every single studio ever around has used the same one, and they've just bashed the heck out of these kits, just as you were saying. Like there's I think it was a Canon kit that they used for like some of the antennas and things for what's it, Close Encounters and all these kind of movies. If you look at Close Encounters 2, there's an R2D2 and a C3PO on one of the scenes where it's coming up over a hill, the main mothership, which has always fascinated me. I love that kind of stuff on those. I love how they have the little models and the pieces. That's always fascinated me.
Man, Close Encounters used to freak me out when I was a kid because that came out when I was like really, really young. What
1978.
Okay, so never mind. I didn't see. I saw it on the back end, but I was really young when I saw it on the back end. And those aliens, when they come out with those eyes, like the human eyes that were just so big, that used to freak me out. Like when I was a kid, like
I've always been fascinated by that stuff. I mean, I've seen a unidentified flying object, and I'm not some nut or anything like that, but the same one that we saw was actually on Unsolved Mysteries with actual video and many other witnesses who saw it in the same city. So, I mean, I don't know what it was, but my opinion is there's obviously something there. Not to go off into some future sci-fi thing, but you know, I have an affiliation for that kind of stuff ever since that incident. So.
oh yeah, me too. Was it the triangle one? Was it the Aurora
It was
one?
lights that in fact I've been trying to find this episode because I was there with several other people who all saw it. It was in the evening. It was in a national forest, Lake City, in Florida, near Osceola, I think is what the town was. But anyway, it was at the end of a field. We were out there. We were just shooting the bull at the time, and a light was at the end of the field, and it was really bright. No sound, no nothing. And we all stopped, and we were drinking, so we thought, we're just, not paying enough attention. And it moved like really weird. And the field was a huge field. It was a pasture. It was a cow pasture more than a field. And it may have been, a quarter of a mile to the other side of the field. And it was right there above us, maybe 100 feet above us in like a half a second. I mean, I didn't even have time to blink, and it was right there. And so we all stopped what we were doing, and we're all like kind of freaking out. We walked towards the woods to get out of the middle of being out in the open, and it was doing all these weird things in the sky, and then it was gone in just like a second. No sound, no nothing. It wasn't a helicopter. It wasn't a jet. It wasn't anything like that. And I don't believe in Bigfoot or any of that kind of stuff either. I mean, there could be something still alive that we've missed, but that was just the one thing in my mind that says we don't know everything, and there's something else going on, that whether it's our government hiding something or what. Again, I'm not trying to be conspiracy theorist at all, but
No,
I saw something that was on TV by somebody else that no one can explain, that showed up on radar. So, I know it was on radar. So that's the key, I guess.
No, yeah, like first off, real quick, Marie C donated $5. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Thank you for sure. That's 2 cups of coffee, so I really appreciate that for sure.
Well,
Like,
thank you, Marie C, too, for Chris there. I think
yeah,
she comes to our show, I think, too, as well.
that's awesome. But no, man, like I believe in the paranormal. I've seen ghosts a couple times. I've seen a UFO, but nothing as crazy as that. It was probably like a drone or something, a new drone, because we're in Southern California. You see that kind of weird stuff sometimes. But I do believe, and this isn't reseller talk or anything, but I do believe that this Earth that we're on is more stranger than we can ever imagine. Like I'll just
Oh,
put.
I think we're in the infancy of science, and that if we knew even a hundredth of what actually is going on, we'd be shocked every day of our lives. I mean, that's my opinion. I think they're missing some huge picture. I took physics. I wasn't great at it. I got a C plus. So I mean, I know the basics of all this and all that, but there's so much more. They're missing something. There's some big thing that we're missing that they just can't comprehend. And I keep up on that. I took astronomy as well, and the claim is that it's too far away for them to travel. With our technology, it is, but I fully agree, or fully think that there is people that are creatures or whatever that can traverse this space without doing anything. It's
Yep.
just a matter of flicking a switch. And I love people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, but I fully disagree that there's no way that they could get here with that time frame.
Yeah.
I saw
Mainstream.
something. I was
Go
just gonna
ahead.
say, I saw something that there's no one that can explain. The government actually looked into the one that I saw because it showed up on radar in Lake City. I know it's there's no explanation, and it was on TV. There's no base around there. There's no justification. There's nothing that we still have. This was 15 or 20 years ago. There was nothing that we still have that could do what I saw. And we went to the air shows in Meridian. They do an air show here. The kids can take free jump flights and stuff on a I think it's a DC-10 that they have out here at the airport. So I know what planes do. I've flown hundreds of flights. I know what helicopters do. My father was in the military. I've seen the military copters. We've seen some military prototypes. I lived in Florida. I saw the shuttle launch from 3 miles away. I know what that stuff looks like. We've seen them detonate a rocket before in Florida. I know what, I mean, I've seen all the things they can wave off as what I would have seen, and it was none of those. Again, I don't know what it was, but I do believe that there could be easily someone from somewhere else here at any given point, and the time distance is nothing when you have the technology. That's just what I think.
Yeah. Well, let's talk some facts about that too. So there's 2 facts that I always bring up when these conversations. One, our color spectrum that we can see is like super narrow.
You're
So
going into the color. My son is working on. I won't get into it. He's working on certain types of light, and then we've been ordering lasers and lights and LED stuff, and he's been creating stuff. So you talking about that, I fully agree. That's 100%. Just like when they look at the sky with radio telescope, you pick up stuff that you can't see, or the background noise and all of that kind of stuff that's out there that we aren't missing, or the fast radio bursts that they can't explain, which could be some kind of signaling device, because they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, if you know what that is or not. But
yeah, for sure. It's almost like, we only use a certain proportion of our brain power percentage, which is another topic to get into. But it's almost like as humans, we're only like looking into a pinhole through a piece of paper. Have you ever seen, I think it was Plato's cave analogy, the cave. Have you heard of that?
probably, but it's probably been a long time. I
So,
mean, I know
so
who Plato is, but
okay, so it goes like this. Imagine you spent your life in a cave. You've never been outside of a cave and you're facing.
okay, I've heard that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're facing a wall and your whole life, all you've seen is shadows when people are walking by the cave. You think that's reality, but there's a whole reality outside that cave. That's Plato's cave analogy. So like, that's what I'm saying. This world is crazy. There's gotta be like, yeah. So
Well, it goes into talking about that, just like Occam's razor, which says that it's usually the simplest explanation is the actual real explanation. What I saw cannot be explained by anything without some huge elaborate scheme. The thing that makes the sense is it is some kind of vehicle that can do stuff that we can't, because they've got technology that we don't have.
right.
100 years ago, if somebody saw a CD or a cell phone, they'd freak out.
Yeah.
Even in the 40s, some of the tribes that saw World War II planes for the first time actually idolized them and made actual mock-ups of those vehicles, thinking it was a god. And that's
Yeah,
true. I mean, that
exactly.
happened in the 40s. That's not that long ago.
Yeah, you actually bring up an interesting point when here's the thing too that I'm glad that you brought that up is there's old ancient cave paintings
Seen them all. I know
of what
exactly.
but listen, like think about this. So everyone's like, "Oh my god, there was aliens back in the day." What if they were just comic book fiction writers and they were just kind of writing a story on the wall? Like people believe it's like 100% true, but what if someone was just telling a story for their
I
friends?
thought that exact. You know, the ones that astonished me though, there's some Japanese statuary made out of bronze that literally have what looks like a pressure suit with a helmet, and it actually has hoses. These are real. They're 4,200 years old. They've been, you know, dated and carbon dated, and there's a bunch of them. Stuff like that always makes me wonder. I discount the Mayan temple one with what looks like a rocket, because if you see the whole thing and the whole layout, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
I do.
that one can be debunked, and most of the other ones can be debunked. There's one that's in a cathedral that looks like a spaceship with a gentleman in controls. That one can't be debunked, and I mean, there's some that can't be debunked. The cave drawings, I can fully see that somebody was just fantasizing or ate the wrong mushroom and then boom, you know,
Right.
laughing, but you know, that's there's a mushroom and
True.
eight mushroom philosophy that goes around with that too.
Yeah, that's too funny. So it's getting to the top of the hour, Don. I think we should probably do another show. I have still a ton of notes, and you're a busy guy, and I'm a busy guy, so I don't want to take up much of your time. Don's channel, his link is below. His Patreon is below. I just signed up today for your Patreon. Do you want to talk about your Patreon real quick?
Patreon wise, I do mostly videos. I do have access on the various levels to like documents and things. If you do like the 9.99 on one is the most common one most people do. It includes pretty much everything other than like a one-on-one conversation, which I do have some people that do that. But with that one, you get all the videos, and I actually have like a log that has that you can download, and it has every single video and what's in them as well as links. So that's a big help to some people, because I know people complain that I don't put what's in every video, but people don't tend to watch some videos if you say it's only this. And if they don't watch videos that are something that they should be looking at, I think that's it hurts the I don't know what you want to call it. It bothers me when they don't want to look at it because they don't think it's something they're going to find, I guess, is the key here. If people spent more time on looking at stuff like that, they could expand their knowledge. The folks who don't want to learn something new are the ones that's going to fail first. So in Patreon, I try to do stuff like that. The videos that I do, I've started to put out like top 20 bolo lists video wise, to give you some ideas. And there are specific items to buy, not generalized like I do on YouTube. They're literally ones that I can find over and over again. I even sometimes call out items that I've talked about in some of these on the YouTube channel, just so my Patreons can see that I do find the items that I talk about just in Patreon religiously all the time. That's the gist of basically what I do. Any Patreon support obviously helps support my YouTube channel for the most part. I usually put out at least 2 extra videos just for Patreon. I've got one going up today. It is sitting on a laptop right behind me right now, going up to YouTube right this second. So again, 2 videos a week. They're probably going to be 3 up this week because last week was a fiasco with our business. We were just so packed last week. I don't know what the heck was going on. I'm happy, but I didn't get anything done. It was just a bad week for accomplishing anything, I guess.
So there's
Um,
plenty of the exclusive content on the Patreon site.
as of, I mean, I've only been up on Patreon, I think, for like 4 months. And I want to say there's like 25 videos or so up there. And most of the videos on Patreon, instead of being like 10 or 15 minutes like you see on YouTube, are like 30 or 40 minutes. I
Oh,
think most
wow.
all of them.
Okay.
Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. I answer any questions on Patreon. If somebody posts one, I answer every question, usually in a video, unless I already have a video going up on YouTube. But I'll answer specific questions to anybody in the groups, whether they just want a text answer or not. If you send something there, I'll be happy to tell you prices as well. I do that on Facebook, but on Facebook, I just don't have the time. I'm almost debating on waving Facebook aside just because it takes up a lot of time. But I do anything like that. I encourage anybody to ask questions. I've done videos just 40 minutes or whatever, an hour, on just answering everybody's questions. And I try to put relevant information that I don't want to share openly as well, too, obviously. The last video that I put up was on thinking outside the box, and
You're the king of that, by the way.
well, this is, I don't want to give out too much on the video, but it's something that we've done for years that most people just think would be just waste of your time, that we've made a ton of money on. And it's some of it's things that you can create and make. And the last video, if you watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I go into some other avenues of making money that most people aren't talking about at all. There was some laws changed real recently that affect things that you can and can't do. And again, I'm not going to call that out in here, but watch the last video. They're all numbered, so you can literally see the number on it. I think it's video 23 or 24. But it's stuff like that, stuff that most people wouldn't think of. Again, it's not going to be everybody's taste. I'm never offended if somebody doesn't like it or doesn't think, they're getting what they want out of it and they want to cancel it or whatever. But I try to put stuff that no one else talks about that we routinely make money on. As I said, like creation wise, I create a lot of stuff, and we've created stuff for years and years and years and years. I've done postcard lines for 6 or so years. We've done graphic stuff. I've got trademarks for characters, copyrights. I'm working on animation now, so we've got I know this stuff. So a lot of the stuff I talk to is going to be some artsy related stuff or something that's just crazy out there that it's so crazy that people make money at it because people think it's crazy. So if that helps, kind of explain it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I had a successful Patreon maybe 3 years ago with my Evolos art. I was making almost $1,000 a month with my Patreon, and I was doing like exclusive customs every month. I'd make like a custom of the month of Funko Pops or Amiibos or Vinylmations or whatever I was doing at the time. And that was very successful. And then, and then we had financial issues, and my wife lost her job. We lost her home. So all that literally fell apart in the blink of an eye. So I couldn't make customs in time. People started to fall off the map. But you, my friend, have brought me back into Patreon. I cannot wait to dive into your content. I've been doing this for a very, very, very long time. And I will say that your content is amazing content. And if someone like an old dog like myself can learn new tricks, man, imagine like the newbies, the amount of information that you'll be providing for them for sure, dude. So any last words, Don, before we head out? We're gonna do the show again because there's so many topics we didn't even touch upon.
The one thing I can say is most people who aren't interested in what I do, and I'm not trying to promote myself as some great guru or anything. I've just done it so long. Most people won't look outside the box, and they won't want to stray away from what they're doing now. All the clothes sellers, again, I started with clothing. I did it for years. We still have some clothing, but all the clothes sellers and the RA guys that flip, it's they don't see, they think this is a lark and they'll never find the stuff. But I've gotten a growing crowd of people that have now come up and started to make a ton of money in times when all their buddies who are still selling the clothing that they were selling are dead and dying because of the atmosphere. They're not expanding. The only way to get this to work in my book is to know all these odd stuff, as well as the clothing, as well as the books, as well as the RA. I would no way be where I'm at if I didn't expand my business to as much as I can get it at this point, and then work from there. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if I've got to spend hundreds of dollars in the initial start to get it going. To like I said, I just hired somebody else. It's an automatic, a big chunk of change to bring somebody in to pay them, for 5 days a week, 4 weeks out of the month to come in. But you've got to take the chances. And at this point, I've got so much stuff here. And the reason I can afford to share this is because so many people aren't going to take the chance, or they'll quit and think it's just so easy. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. But you got to take those chances, and you've got to expand your business. You've got to look at cross-listing. You've got to look at doing other stuff besides just the clothing. Most of the YouTubers, as you know, do clothing. And again, nothing wrong with clothing. Nothing at all. Yep. I don't like it anymore at all. I stay away from it. If you're just going to be stuck on clothing, you're going to have an issue because they can pull that out from under you at any time with the Vero, banning this, banning that, whatever they want to do, or the companies, which they're doing right now, are going to undercut you by being able to sell the same clothing new for just a few bucks more than that you're selling it for used. I mean, they can undercut anybody. They can end your business. They can't end vintage because it's already created. It's already here. There's just too many markets for vintage. So, I mean, I make probably as much as almost any RA are doing just the vintage, and I do RA. I mean, we make an easy well, I'm not going to get into the digit, but we make 5 digits easily just in my one store every single month, no matter what, summer, winter, spring, and fall. Collectibles do not die like winter goods or like clothing, like all that stuff. Right now, if I was selling clothing like the half a dozen people I talked to yesterday personally on the phone, I'd be in trouble. I can't buy clothing. I have no savers up here. Our Goodwill checks prices. They do Goodwill auctions. Our Salvation Army scans books. They do auctions. It's only mom and pa's, and there's only a few of those left around here. Half the thrift stores in my town are closed. Half of them. So if and every time I talk to somebody else, their Savers closed down, or this closed down, or Goodwill's having issues. If people can't see what's going on and start expanding their market, again, don't just look at me. Even if you don't look at me or care about me at all, don't like me or whatever, I don't care. But the point is, if they're not going to do that, you might as well just close up your business, because in a year or two, this market's going to be even worse. I've seen it from start to finish, how the market's changed. I've been dead on what's going on. And if we didn't do what we did, we would have been dead at so many times in our life with eBay, or whatever we're doing. So, you got to do that. I don't know any other way around it nowadays. 10, 15 years ago, you could make a living on eBay, just eBay. No, nothing else mattered. Amazon was just bare bones there. I mean, nowadays we're even approved on Walmart now, believe it or not. So,
is that right? I tried to do that a few years ago and they rejected me for
try it again. We've been on Amazon, so I've got all these things that I can, produce. I've got, sales records if they need them also, but I'm expanding whatever I can do. Amazon and Walmart are basically the same thing nowadays. It's the same basic principle and process, and it's just going to be like RA and wholesale items. It's stuff that's not going to take up much of my time once I get the listing up. That's what I'm doing. That's like the video for my Patreon. It's something that I've got listings of that I've sold for years, the same item over and over and over, that I can make instead of actually buying. There's just no better feeling than knowing that I don't have to go out and source if I don't want to. That's key. I mean, I don't want to ramble, but
no, it's all good. Like I was saying, that was another topic that, we're going to have to do another show when you get some time, about the private label. Like, private label for me and you is a different thing than just putting a name on a toothbrush. We actually will make something with our creativity. And I feel like everyone's got a creative spot inside them. Some of them have to be pulled out. Some of them are on the surface. But I think, like, thinking outside of the box is exactly what you're doing. You're making your own products. And so I think that's great.
That's key. I mean, I've got postcard lines. I've got a ton of different postcards. There's a bunch that don't go anywhere. I may only sell one out of 100, but they're cheap to make. You can go to Got Print and you can get 100 postcards for $22. Of your artwork, you spend the time doing it, you figure out how to work their templates. You don't have to sell them all. With the price that you pay for them, usually I'll sell one postcard, I'll make a profit. I've got 99 more to go. They usually get 10 or 15 extra for samples. And, you get one of those that sells over and over again. You have a couple that flop, you get another one that sells. So now you've got 2 in a month time. 6 months down the road, you could have 12 items that could sell over and over and over and over and over again. Like the postcards that I do, I don't think a day goes by that I don't sell at least 1 or 2 of one of my designs at some platform every single day of the week. So, once you get those, you can kind of steer your business to, stylize them to look more like that. I know certain designs I'll never do again. I know certain aspects when it's printed won't look right. Like I did a fantasy one with a wizard and all these sparkly effects like Disney would do for like I don't know, one of the movies. I can't think of the name of it. Sword and Stone. Sword and Stone. When the wizards fight and they've got all the little sparklings going around and stuff like
where
that.
They scratched. It was funny how I watched a video on how they made that, how they scratched those little fairy dust things into the cells and things like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, some of them are scratched. If you didn't know Forbidden Planet, have you seen Forbidden Planet, correct?
No, this sounds familiar, but I don't
That's
think.
Robbie the Robot.
Okay,
Disney did the animation to that. So that's like one of those crossovers. But a lot of those were like, if you look at Fantasia, and I've got the book on Fantasia, those are all hand painted. All those little tiny little speckles were hand painted, not scratched. They were literally painted on a cell, which took some cells took hours to do, like in the Nutcracker Suite with the wisping dandelion seed pods that were floating and flying around. I mean, it's amazing stuff that they do. I've kind of sidetracked my own self.
It's all good. No, we got to do another show for sure. Anyways, Don's stuff is all below. Don, I really appreciate your time. I know your time is very valuable. You're one of my favorite YouTubers, reselling YouTubers on the platform. Everyone go check it out. I cannot wait to dive into your Patreon and all that fun stuff. And so, any last words?
I just want to honestly thank you. Chris here is one of the few that I was impressed the first time I saw his page. That Gary V drew me in, I have to say, and I don't even remember how I saw it, but Anybody who's been on as long as me and has that artistic knowledge is I'm drawn to them. I mean, you've got a good thing about your channel, your show. I love, love, love the fact that you do custom figures like that. I mean, we've done some in the past. I've just went to, creating our own so I can copyright them. I don't know where you stand on the Gary V issue, but it's an awesome job on that. I honestly am
Oh,
really impressed with that. That's like one of the best ones I've seen. And I've been to the shows here in Detroit and stuff like that. My friend does Dragon Con and Comic Con and all that. But
well, it took me years, and like I said, we'll talk on Patreon how you can do this. I don't really like to share it too
no,
much
sure, don't you don't have to share anything.
because
I completely understand.
literally people will have over the years, and we didn't even get into this subject. People have taken my methods and processes and have claimed it to be their own, have made thousands of dollars on what I've discovered and what I came up with. So I don't really like to tell everyone my trade secrets on that.
Completely understand.
But yeah, I'll let you know how to get that to look that sweet. So, all right, Don, I really appreciate you coming on. Everyone, go check it out. We're gonna probably do this again at some point when Don has some time, and we'll see you next time. Take care.